At 56, Phil Mickelson blindsided after Saudi funding officially pulls out of league. This isn't a rumor, it's a $5 billion disaster. The Saudis walked away from LIV Golf. Phil is 56, stuck, and the money he bet his legacy on just evaporated. And honestly, the pure audacity makes you almost laugh. Regular folks are grinding through rising prices and inflation, yet these country club elites are panicking because their billionaire sugar daddy left them on red. It's a brutal reality check proving these guys sold their PGA Tour cards for a check that bounced. Pure, unfiltered financial karma. But look past the gloating. Phil Mickelson isn't just a greedy has-been. He is the victim of a brutal financial trap called the sovereign wealth trap. He realized too late that his $200 million deal was designed to shift all the risk away from the Saudis and directly onto his shoulders. Let me show you exactly how this funding died and why Phil is taking the hardest fall of anyone. Personally, I think Phil got played harder than anyone in golf history. Do you think he deserves this fall? Drop it below. And if nobody else is telling the real story behind the LIV cash, subscribe. Let's start with the exact moment it all went wrong. April 30th, 2026. That is the date that changed everything for LIV Golf and every player who signed up for it. The Saudi Public Investment Fund, the people who wrote the checks, the people who promised billions, the people who convinced some of the biggest names in golf to walk away from the PGA Tour, released a statement. It was short, it was cold, and it was devastating. Here is what they said, word for word. PIF has made the decision to fund LIV Golf only for the remainder of the 2026 season. The substantial investment required by LIV Golf over a longer term is no longer consistent with the current phase of PIF's investment strategy. Read that again. No longer consistent. That's corporate speak for we are done, not we are pausing, not we are reevaluating. Done. Finished. The money stops at the end of this season. And the timing? Brutal. The 2026 season wasn't even halfway done. Players had events scheduled, contracts in place, and promises made. None of that matters anymore. The Saudis didn't just pull the plug. They yanked it out of the wall. Now, why would they do this? Let's be honest about the numbers. LIV Golf was losing money at a staggering rate. Estimates put the total investment somewhere between $5 and $8 billion. That's billion with a B. And there was no path to profitability for at least another decade. But money wasn't the only factor. There was a war. The Iran conflict disrupted Saudi oil exports in a way that forced the kingdom to rethink every single dollar it was spending. Suddenly, funding a golf league that burned hundreds of millions every year didn't seem like such a great idea. And then there was the embarrassment factor. Reports started circulating that a certain player's catastrophic performance at the Masters was the final straw. The Saudis supposedly felt humiliated. Their flagship investment was making them look foolish on the biggest stage in golf. Whether that report is fully true or just convenient timing, the effect was the same. The Saudis wanted out. And they got out. The announcement didn't just shock the players, it shocked everyone who followed the league. Yasir Al-Rumayyan, the chairman of PIF and the face of the Saudi investment, stepped down from the LIV board immediately. That's not a resignation you take lightly. Players found out the same way the rest of the world did, through news alerts, through social media, through phone calls from their agents who were just as blindsided as they were. One of LIV's biggest names would later say, and I'm quoting him directly, "We were surprised that they pulled out as quickly as they did. We didn't really see that coming." When the players themselves say they didn't see it coming, you know this wasn't planned. This wasn't a slow fade. This was a shock to the system. Now, let's be clear about what this announcement actually meant. PIF didn't say they were ending LIV Golf immediately. They said they would fund it only for the remainder of the 2026 season. That gave the league a few more months of life support. But everyone knew what that really meant. The league was a dead man walking. The tournaments would continue, but the future was gone. The players would keep showing up, but the money was already drying up. Not the kind of math where you calculate your winnings. The kind of math where you calculate what you just lost. You have to understand what these players gave up to join LIV. They left the PGA Tour. They left their sponsorships. They left their friends, their rivalries, their place in the history of the game, and they did it for one reason: money. The Saudis offered contracts that were simply too big to refuse. Numbers so obscene that turning them down seemed almost foolish. But here is the thing about money that's too good to be true. It usually is. The players who took those deals weren't stupid. They were smart. They saw an opportunity and they took it. What they didn't see was the trap. The contracts they signed were structured in a way that shifted all the risk onto the players. The Saudis could walk away at any time. The players couldn't. There were no exit clauses. There was no safety net. There was just a promise and a handshake. And when the Saudis decided to leave, that promise became meaningless. Think about what that means for the man at the center of this story. A 56-year-old legend who bet everything on this deal. He walked away from the PGA Tour. He walked away from his legacy. He walked away from the fans who once cheered his name. And now, the people who wrote his checks are leaving. He didn't see this coming. None of them did. But he is the one who has the most to lose. Because at 56, there's no do-over. There's no second chance. There's no tour waiting to welcome him back with open arms. The PGA Tour closed that door. The returning member program had a deadline, and that deadline passed on February 2nd. For some players, that door was still open. For him, it's locked, and the people holding the key aren't interested in letting him back in. So here is where we stand. The Saudis walked away. The money is drying up. The players are scrambling. And the face of the entire operation is about to discover that the price of a bad bet isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in everything you had left to lose. The Saudi check cleared for the last time. But for one 56-year-old, the real bill was just about to arrive. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to what the players were told when they signed. The Saudis didn't just offer money. They offered security. They offered certainty. They offered a future. Players were assured, both verbally and in writing, that the funding was locked in until 2032. That's a decade of guaranteed paychecks, a decade of stability, a decade of not having to worry about where the next dollar was coming from. That assurance is what convinced so many to leave the PGA Tour. It wasn't just the money, it was the guarantee that the money would keep coming. Bryson DeChambeau, one of the league's biggest stars, later admitted just how shocking the pullout was. His exact words, "We were surprised that they pulled out as quickly as they did. We didn't really see that coming." When Bryson says he didn't see it coming, you have to understand what that means. This is a guy who calculates everything. He measures wind speed down to the decimal. He knows the exact carry distance of every club in his bag. He doesn't get surprised easily. And yet he was blindsided. That tells you everything you need to know about how sudden this was. The players weren't just shocked. They were betrayed. They had structured their entire careers around a guarantee that turned out to be worth nothing. Think about the sheer weight of that betrayal. These players walked away from the PGA Tour. They walked away from the Ryder Cup. They walked away from the majors that defined their legacies. They walked away from the fans who cheered their names. And they did it because the Saudis promised them the world. Now that promise is gone. And the world they left behind isn't waiting for them. Bryson admitted he was shocked. For Phil, shock turned into something far colder. The cold realization that his exit strategy was gone. Let's talk about Phil Mickelson specifically. Because while every LIV player is feeling the pain, Phil is feeling it differently. Phil is 56 years old. That matters. At 56, you don't have the luxury of time. You don't have the luxury of rebuilding. You don't have the luxury of waiting for the next opportunity. Phil knows this. He's been playing professional golf for over 3 decades. He's won 6 majors. He's been the face of the game. He's done things on a golf course that nobody else has ever done. But he's also made decisions that nobody else has ever made. The decision to leave the PGA Tour for LIV Golf was the biggest gamble of his career. And not just his golf career, his entire professional life. He signed a contract reportedly worth $200 million. That's the kind of money that changes your family's future for generations. That's the kind of money that makes you feel invincible. But here's the thing about contracts. They're only worth what the people signing them are willing to pay. And the Saudis just stopped paying. Phil's reaction to the crisis has been telling. While other players spoke out, while Bryson gave interviews and tried to rally the troops, Phil stayed silent. He didn't address the funding collapse. He didn't reassure his fans. He didn't explain what this meant for his future. Instead, he used his platform to complain about California fuel policies, in a Middle East oil post of all things. He was more concerned about gas prices than the fact that his $200 million contract was evaporating. That silence says everything. Phil knows he's trapped. He knows there's no way back to the PGA Tour. He knows the Saudis aren't coming back to save him. So what does he do? He posts about gas prices, because addressing the real problem would mean admitting that he made the biggest mistake of his life. And Phil Mickelson doesn't admit mistakes. He doubles down. He deflects. He pretends everything is fine. But everything is not fine. His personal life is in chaos. He's facing misconduct allegations that have damaged his reputation. He resigned from a country club membership. The people who once celebrated his victories are now questioning his character, and now his financial future is crumbling too. At 56, with no tour to go back to, with no safety net, with no plan B, Phil Mickelson is facing the most uncertain moment of his entire career, and he's facing it alone. Phil's legacy is burning in real time, but the fire didn't start with him. It started with a $300 million promise made to a man in his prime. Jon Rahm signed the biggest contract in LIV history, $300 million. That's not just golf money. That's life-changing, generation-defining, never-work-again money. Rahm was the crown jewel of the Saudi investment. They threw everything at him. They made him the face of the league. They built marketing campaigns around him. They gave him the kind of money that makes you the highest-paid player in the sport. And now, that contract is as good as a napkin. Rahm is 30 years old. He's in his prime. He should be competing for majors, building his legacy, cementing his place in golf history. Instead, he's stuck in a league that's collapsing around him. He missed the deadline to return to the PGA Tour. That deadline passed on February 2nd. He was eligible, but he didn't pull the trigger. It wasn't. Now Rahm is watching his $300 million deal turn into dust. He's watching the league he bet his future on crumble. He's watching his fellow players scramble for a way out while he has nowhere to go. The irony is brutal. Rahm left the PGA Tour because the money was too good to refuse. He was the biggest catch for LIV, the proof that the Saudis were serious. And now he's the biggest cautionary tale. Rahm's contract is as good as a napkin now. Meanwhile, one guy actually cashed out and ran before the collapse. Brooks Koepka did something that nobody else had the guts to do. He left LIV before the collapse. Koepka rejoined the PGA Tour in early 2026. He followed the returning member program to the letter. He paid a $5 million charity donation. He accepted no equity grants for 5 years. He did everything the tour asked of him. And it worked. He's back. He's playing on the PGA Tour. He's competing in the majors. He's safe. Koepka saw what was coming. Maybe he didn't know exactly when the Saudis would pull the plug, but he knew the situation was unstable. He knew the money couldn't last forever. He knew that a league built on unlimited Saudi cash was one geopolitical crisis away from disaster. So he got out. He took the penalty. He ate the cost. And he walked away with his career intact. Every other LIV player is now looking at Koepka and wondering why they didn't do the same thing. He is the only major LIV star who successfully navigated the return. He is the only one who can sleep at night knowing his future is secure. He is the only one who didn't let greed cloud his judgment. And that's what makes the contrast so stark. Koepka played the long game. He thought about his legacy. He thought about his career. He thought about what would happen when the money ran out. The others thought about the money, and now the money is gone. Brooks Koepka is already back on the PGA Tour. The rest are still trying to find the exit door. Dustin Johnson is a different story. He's the captain of the Four Aces. He signed a contract extension that reportedly runs through 2029. On paper, he's secure. On paper, he doesn't have to worry. But contracts on paper don't mean anything when the people writing the checks are gone. Johnson has stayed quiet throughout this whole mess. But quiet doesn't mean safe. Quiet doesn't mean secure. Quiet just means he's waiting. And waiting is the worst thing you can do right now. Because while he waits, the league is falling apart. Tournaments are being canceled. Partners are abandoning ship. Bankruptcy preparations are underway. Johnson's contract might say 2029, but bankruptcy doesn't care about fine print. Bankruptcy voids contracts. Bankruptcy ends obligations. Bankruptcy turns guarantees into memories. So DJ sits there, silent, watching everything he built in LIV dissolve around him. He's 42 years old. He's got a few good years left. But where is he going to play them? The PGA Tour isn't welcoming him back. The deadline passed. The door is closed. He's stuck in the same trap as everyone else. DJ's deal runs through 2029. Too bad bankruptcy doesn't care about fine print. Sergio Garcia's situation is different from the others, because Sergio might have actually caused the collapse. Reports emerged that Garcia's catastrophic performance at the Masters was the final straw for the Saudis. They were embarrassed. Their investment was supposed to be a showcase of elite golf. Instead, it was a disaster. Garcia is the captain of the Fireballs. He was one of the first big names to join LIV. He was supposed to be a leader, a champion, a symbol of what the league could achieve. Instead, he became the symbol of everything that was wrong with it. If the reports are true, Sergio's meltdown accelerated the Saudis' decision to pull funding. He didn't just embarrass himself, he embarrassed the people writing the checks. And when you embarrass billionaires, they stop writing checks. The irony is almost too perfect. Garcia helped build LIV. He was one of its biggest stars. He was one of its most vocal supporters. And now, he might be the reason it's falling apart. Sergio might have lit the fuse. The rest of the roster is just waiting for the boom. Cameron Smith missed the February 2nd deadline to return to the PGA Tour. He was eligible. He could have followed the same path as Brooks Koepka. He could have paid the penalty, accepted the restrictions, and gone back to the tour. He didn't. Now he's stuck. Smith is 33 years old. He's a major champion. He should be competing on the biggest stages in golf. Instead, he's watching his future disappear with every passing day. Patrick Reed is in a slightly different position. He's eligible to feature on the PGA Tour from September 2026. That's coming up soon. He might be the first to make the jump back, now that the money is gone. But even for Reed, the path isn't clear. The tour isn't exactly welcoming LIV defectors with open arms. There are restrictions. There are penalties. There are conditions that make a return difficult. Charles Howell III hasn't been paid for LIV New York. It's been over 2 weeks. The money has already stopped flowing. If the league can't pay its players for an event that already happened, what does that say about its future? Louis Oosthuizen, Taylor Gooch, Joaquin Niemann, all team captains, all stuck with no return window, all watching their careers hang in the balance. They are essentially free agents in a sport that only has one major league, and that league doesn't want them. The money stopped flowing weeks ago. The tournament started dropping days later. The physical destruction of LIV Golf is happening in real time. Tournaments are being canceled. The New Orleans event is gone. The $40 million Michigan Team Championship is gone. The Asian Tour, which had partnered with LIV, has officially partnered with the PGA Tour instead. They abandoned LIV completely. And LIV is preparing for potential Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the United States. Bankruptcy would allow the league to restructure its debt. It would also allow it to void player contracts. That's the real nightmare. Bankruptcy means the contracts are gone. The $200 million Phil signed? Gone. The $300 million Jon Rahm signed? Gone. Everyone's deals? Gone. Bankruptcy is the nuclear option. It's the end of the road. It's the final nail in the coffin. LIV CEO Scott O'Neill is trying to find private equity. He's looking for $250 to $300 million in outside investment, but investors are running the numbers and seeing the same thing the Saudis saw. A league that loses money, a league with no clear path to profitability, a league that's already dying. The Asian Tour is gone, the tournaments are gone, the money is gone, and the players, they're still here, waiting, watching, wondering what comes next. The league is gone. The legacy of every player who joined is permanently stained. Phil Mickelson once called the Saudis scary motherfiff. To get involved with. Those were his exact words. He knew exactly what he was getting into. He knew the Saudis were ruthless. He knew they were dangerous. He knew they would never be loyal to him, and he took the money anyway. Now they've discarded him. At 56, with no tour to go back to, with no legacy to fall back on, with nothing but a $200 million contract that's not worth the paper it's printed on. Phil Mickelson destroyed his reputation for this. He burned every bridge he had. He walked away from the PGA Tour. He walked away from the fans. He walked away from his place in golf history. And for what? For a check that bounced. He won't complete the career Grand Slam on his own terms. He won't get a farewell tour. He won't be remembered as the legend he should have been. He'll be remembered as the guy who sold out for money that never materialized. The system he tried to exploit is going to outlast him. The PGA Tour is still here. The majors are still here. The game of golf is still here. And Phil? He's out there, somewhere, still silent, still posting about gas prices, still pretending everything is fine. But everything is not fine. Everything is falling apart. And at 56, Phil Mickelson has run out of time to fix it. He bet his legacy on the Saudis. The Saudis walked away. He bet his future on a check that bounced. And now he's got nothing left but the game he walked away from, a game that's never letting him back in. Phil Mickelson sold his legacy for a check that bounced. And at 56, there's no second cut, no mulligan, and no do-over. The Saudis walked. The money is gone. And the game he left behind is never letting him back in.